Welcome back to the Patient First podcast. Today we're talking about the human psyche, what goes on in our brains, how it's changed. So I'm going to read a statement that I found online that I think affects us greatly and how we put patients first. So allow me to just read this for a second. Pay attention. So it's about the attention span of humans. Probably know where I'm going with this. That according to research, our attention span has markedly decreased in just 15 years. In 2000, it was 12 seconds. Now, 15 years later, it's shrunk significantly to 8.25 seconds. In fact, scientists reckon we now have shorter attention spans than goldfish who are able to focus on a task or object for 9 seconds. January 24, 2022. So I have one question for you. Did I lose you? Right? Were you able to focus through that research on attention spans? If not, like me, I probably would have tuned out and had illustrated the point that those of you that have been through the Insanely Productive Dentist series or are fans of the podcast know that I'm a fan of Ted Lasso, that show, and he talks about be the goldfish so that you can wipe your memory clean and move forward. I think we should now say be the human because our attention spans are worse. And if you paid attention and you were able to understand what went on in that study, it talked about the attention span decrease by about half from the year 2000 to 2015. What do you think's happened since 2015 and 2022? Don't have research other than walking around planet Earth and seeing that it's gotten markedly worse. And during the pandemic, holy crap, I think it's gotten worse. Where I think we all it's probably our attention span is literally probably I believe half the span of a goldfish right now. And I'm including myself on this, right? Now, this affects us, right? We might not be as bad as our patients, and when we look at our patients, but we're also not as good as we probably think, including myself. So, what do we do about it? First off, I want to point out number 1, 2, and 3 that this is not your fault. We are living in a completely distractible world, right? Phones, notifications, demands that are coming at us from all directions. I mean, the world we live in has trained us to be distractible, and we have externalities on our psyche that a goldfish just doesn't. If you were sitting in a bowl swimming around all day, your attention span would be a lot greater, right? So this isn't our fault. It doesn't mean that we can't take action, however, to help ourselves and our practices. Look, we're not going to change our employees' attention span, let alone our patients' attention span, right? We can work on ourselves a little bit, maybe, but it's very difficult in today's world to really not be distractible, right? So there's a few tips here that I want to give you to help navigate this tiny attention span that everybody, including you, me, and everybody else on planet Earth has. Now, of course, some have higher attention spans than others, but the bar has been dropped dramatically over the last 22 years at least, right? So, number 1, remove the distractions from yourselves and your team, right? Try to develop some focus to get work done, because what I've done in my life to help remove distractions has had a massive impact on me and, frankly, on my family, on everybody else that I work with. When we work hard, and it is hard work to remove distractions for yourself and your team. So when you're with a patient, try to be with the patient. When you're with a team member, try to be with a team member. Multitasking is a fallacy. There's one person on planet Earth who can multitask, and that's nobody. I firmly believe if you're multitasking, you're doing a lot of things really, really poorly. I think the only way to do anything well is to do one thing at a time and to put your attention on that. And I fail at it all the time. It is really, really hard to do. This takes work. There's whole books written on it. I've actually reviewed a couple on this podcast, like Effortless. There's one called Indistractable. There's Minimalism in a Digital World. There's a lot of great books and things that where you can get help to remove distractions from yourself and your team. I try to give some tips here, but number 1 is to actually have it as a goal that you're going to turn off the notifications on your computer, on your phone, only notifications for what you want to have at that time to help enter your world. There's so many demands on our psyche that negatively affect our attention span within our practices. And it's key because we need to be good listeners to communicate with our team, with our patients, to provide great work, to put patients first. You have to listen to them, and to listen to them, you have to have somewhat of an attention span, right? So, and key to that is to remove distractions. And for I've talked about it before, but for God's sakes, if you have headsets in your office, get rid of them. I think that right there, personally, I think if you have a headset in your ear, or if you have a team member with a headset in their ear, just think about what the patient's perspective is there. That you're always listening to somebody else. There's always going to be somebody. There's at least the potential for something happening in your ear that the patient doesn't even hear, that's distracting that person from the conversation that you're having with them, right? At Old Navy, where they're selling jeans for $1.50 or whatever it is now, they wear those headsets. But if you go to the same company, Banana Republic, they don't wear the headsets. Why? Because at Banana Republic, they actually care to listen to people, to give you service. And at Old Navy, they don't care because they're selling it so cheap that you couldn't even get the raw fabric and make it yourself that cheap, right? So unless you are going for the lowest value proposition, get rid of headsets, remove distractions for yourself and your team. Number two, think about how your patients think. So number one was about us so that we can develop more focus. Number two is about our patients. So our patients have an attention span that's worse than a goldfish. That was slide number one, right? Our patients have an attention span that's worse than a goldfish. And you're not going to tell your patient turn off notifications, because good luck with that, right? It's not going to happen. We're not going to help improve our patient's attention span in a world where it's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's just the way the world is. But we have to adjust our practices to a world where patients have no attention span. So keep your treatment plan presentations short and to the point. You have 4 seconds. I mean, you literally have maybe 8 seconds, based in 2015, 8 seconds of their attention. So if you talk for 20 minutes and they have an 8 second attention span, what's going on? They are not listening to you, right? Whatever's going on in their brain, they're in the Bahamas. They're driving their new car. They might be looking and nodding. Their 8 second attention span over the course of 8 minutes. Are you kidding me? No. Use visuals, ABC, one, two, three. Get whatever you need to have said, or at least grab their attention in the first 8 seconds, right? So we have to think about how our patients are thinking. If you have a 15-minute attention span, you lost them, right? My podcast here today, the Patient First podcast. When I ask people what do they love about my podcast, when they're giving me all these platitudes about how great it is, the first thing they say is, "I love it because it's so short." What? That's like the worst compliment ever. I love it because you don't talk as much as the other person. I mean, it's because people's attention spans are short. So I'm trying to do that a little bit. Of course, these are about 10 to 20 minutes long. So hopefully I'm re-engaging you every 8 seconds or so. But so think about how patients think and keep your treatment plans presentations short. Whatever you need to say it quick and say it punchy. Number three, financial arrangements are key, right? We have to have things in writing, because if they're not in writing, the number one thing that patients complain about is financial arrangements. And most of us know that. But when it comes to their attention span, if you talk about financial arrangements and their attention span is 8 seconds or less, right? And you talk longer than 8 seconds, they're not going to remember it. So have it in writing. So clear, simple ABC, one, two, three financial arrangements are key, because again, they're not going to remember that you told them, because they're not listening, because they don't have an attention span. And again, it's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is, right? So let's adjust to the way the world is and do what we can to help that work for us, not against us, by meeting people where they are, which is every 5 seconds. So ultimately, I think the big thing with this all filters down to is listening, right? Ask yourself this question. And now I listened to a great speaker that I got this, and I put it on my monitor because I do a lot of conference calls on Zoom, and I talk with lots of people in the industry. I'm on calls all the time where there's 4, 5, 10, 12 to 100 people. And I have the acronym WAIT on my computer, right? It's very ironic for a guy like me to be talking to you about putting this on there, because I'm talking right at you and you can't even talk back unless you comment or subscribe, like. Please comment. I love reading comments, of course. I talk about that all the time. But it's ironic that I'm telling you this, because WAIT stands for why am I talking, right? when you're talking to patients, because they have the attention span of a goldfish, the best way to keep their attention is to have it. And the way to have it is by having them talk. So ask more questions, listen, which is very difficult because we have an attention span of a goldfish too. Exercising your muscle so that you can stay focused, keep your attention while you have the patient talk is the easiest way to address this. So ask yourself, wait, why am I talking? And I have that on my monitor. I've had up there for about a month now, and I see that sometimes, and I just go, "Oh, wait, I have no idea why I'm talking. I got to stop and let somebody else talk." Because if I talk longer than 8 seconds, I've probably lost you, which may have happened during this podcast. I hope not. If not, definitely subscribe. Do what we can to help you be more profitable, to help see things from the patient perspective, and put the patients first here. And I'd love to do it next week with you on the Patient First podcast. Thank you very much.